is they give us that background of, how many people here know what the phrase family of choice is? Everybody. We all end up with a family of choice. We end up with those people who are in our lives, not just because we have friends, but because we need that family, the support. We end up with intergenerational friends that we may not have looked for because they become our surrogate moms and our surrogate kids or our siblings, and it's a thing that's kind of unique to the gay community. We look out and we find a family of choice. And I think in romance novels you really see those families of choice brought out in memorable secondary characters, the wacky friends. An amazing number of lesbian romance novels will always feature a best friend who's a gay man. And sometimes his romance can come into the story, which is kind of a wonderful thing. And for a long time there weren't any romances for gay men. So I know this particular book of mine is a favorite with gay men. It's called Carpool. Because each of the two women have a gay male friend, and they meet, and it's like the men meet, they take one look, like, hey, let's date. And, 2 weeks later, they're living together, and it's like they had no trouble getting over those interim steps, shall we say, that led from the, I think you're cute, to maybe we should move this conversation to the bedroom sort of thing. My heroines take the entire length of the book to figure it out. They don't do the U-Haul thing. They're anti the U-Haul thing. So, but the male friends, and they turned out that the four of them become a very cohesive group. So I'm not going to read from Carpool. I'm going to read from a short story in Frosting on the Cake, where they are making a momentous decision to try to have children, the four of them, which takes obviously one of the guys and one of the girls, because that's how you do that baby thing. It takes those ingredients, and so they're trying to figure out how to do it, and they've hit a roadblock, which is that Anthea, who is the one who's trying to have the baby, hasn't gotten pregnant yet. "You don't look so good," Adrian said to Anthea as he slid into the booth opposite her. "I take it this dinner is not for celebration." Anthea shook her head. She knew Harold and Adrian had been hoping for better news. Harold settled in, his expression composed, though Anthea knew he had to be crushed. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Me too." Shay, Anthea's partner, gave a philosophical shrug, but continued to stare at the menu. She'd been studying it while they waited for the boys to arrive. Anthea knew Shay was as frustrated as the boys were by the arrival of Anthea's period, but she hid it well. "We're going to try again, right?" Theory, Anthea would try for a year before Shay undertook the painful testing and flushing to clear out her tubes and start on the drugs that would make her cycle regular. The four of them had a single goal. They wanted children, at least 2, if not more. Depending on mechanics, the kids' genes would be WASP African, Japanese Jew, WASP Jew, or Japanese African, and with 4 parents to explain it all. I realized that the waiter has got his paired up all wrong in his mind. Paired up, that's sort of what we wanted to talk about, wasn't it? Anthea was glad to see that Shay did look a little nervous, but now she also looked like she was going to laugh, and it wasn't funny. Certainly Anthea had undergone the more unpleasant aspect of insemination so far. Harold had Adrian and other aides Anthea wanted to know nothing about to help him fill the cup for testing at the doctor and for use by them after all. The needleless syringe that Shay used to inject the sperm wasn't particularly comfortable, and neither was the half hour on her back afterward, but they were minor inconveniences. Charting her temperature every day and spending 2 weeks out of 4 wondering if every twinge in her belly meant something, it was hard. Getting her period a day late was very hard, but Harold might not be too thrilled with what they were going to propose. Maybe he wouldn't mind at all. As Shay had said this morning, men are different. Harold sliced into the crusty loaf of bread the waiter had left. "So, what did you want to try? The doctor's office, that process where they wash the sperm and inject it directly into your uterus?" Well, they'd all become so clinical. Anthea tried to stay with that tone. "No, not that invasive, not yet. Shay and I thought we should try a couple of times, directly, without the syringe," Shay added. Harold was obviously puzzled. Adrian figured it out first. "By direct, you mean he delivers?" Adrian's violent red hair seemed to quiver with astonishment. He pointed in the general direction of Harold's lap. "The old-fashioned way?" Anthea's cheeks were hot. Harold's dark cheeks did not show a bit of blush, if in fact he was embarrassed. They were talking about having, well, intercourse. His babies would be so handsome, she thought irrelevantly. "That's what we were thinking about." It had actually been Shay's idea. She glanced at Shay and had to say, "This isn't funny." Shay let out the laughter she had obviously been bottling up. "It's the look on his face," she choked out. The salads arrived. After the waiter had left them alone again, Anthea said, "I'm not sure why we picked a public place to discuss this."
Because Harold and I have mooched enough dinners off you guys. When I said we should just go out, I didn't know we'd be talking about you and Harold doing the nasty. Adrian! He shrugged. There's no point in being a prude about it, Andy. I'm not being a prude. I just have no experience at this, okay? Well, don't look at me, Harold said. I know where all the parts are, but I've never been up close and personal. They ate their salads in silence, and they ignored the fact that Shay and Adrian were barely holding back giggles. They were on to their entrees when Harold finally ventured, okay, it makes sense to try it. Adrian chortled and Shay had to cover her mouth with her napkin. Anthea glared at both of them. It was so not funny. If this doesn't work, it could be you two in bed, you know. Adrian laughed so hard he had to put his head on Harold's shoulder. Anthea kept her shoulder out of Shay's range. Shay had no right to be having hysterics. I'm glad you two think this is amusing. Anthea really didn't want to have sex with Harold. 9 women out of 10 would think she was a fool because he was a god. Broad shoulders, cocoa skin, bedroom eyes. We all agreed at the very beginning, if any of us doesn't feel comfortable, we just stop. If we can't get through this part in harmony, we're not going to be able to handle the stress of 4 people parenting. As I see it, Adrian spluttered, all we have to get past is the fact that you two are virgins. Harold choked on his water. I'm not a complete virgin, Anthea said haughtily. I dated men in college for a while, and it's not like you two aren't in the same boat. Oh, yes, Adrian said thoughtfully. You are certainly an impetuous creature, especially when it comes to sex. I think I can count the women you had before Shay on my thumbs. And what exactly is your point? Adrian knew nothing about her sex life. She glanced at Shay, which was a mistake. Shay's eyes were dancing with laughter. Well, if I know you, dating men was a handshake proposition. Maybe a handjob proposition. Adrian, for God's sake! I love it when you get mad. He spared a slice of grilled squash and contemplated it before popping it into his mouth. You only get mad when I'm right. Anthea glowered at him. Fine. Okay. I never actually had sex with any of them. I was a lesbian. I hadn't figured it out yet. I just thought I had great self-control with men. Shay dove for her napkin again. Harold had to turn his face away, and he could usually be counted on to be mature. This isn't funny, Anthea said again. At least not to me. Shay sobered enough to pat Anthea on the thigh. I know, honey. When the time comes, I know we'll all be serious. We want the baby. Adrian whipped out his Palm Pilot to note the dates for the next try, 13 days in the future. We did the turkey baster twice each cycle. Do you want to do this twice too? Want is the wrong word. And afterward, Anthea knew it was the cake that was to blame. Harold and Adrian were splitting a fudge cake with ganache filling. I do have a concern, Harold said slowly. Anthea ought to have been suspicious of the tiny quirk in his lips. Yeah? Well, I don't want to seem egotistical. I don't want to perpetuate stereotypes. Adrian dropped his fork. Oh my God. Oh my God. I didn't even think of that. Harold went on, now obviously suppressing laughter. But since you're not used to, well, it might be a little bit, nothing little about it, Adrian gasped. A little bit uncomfortable for you, unless you've been, Adrian coughed to clear his throat. If you've been using Adrian! Anthea slammed her hand on the table. Shay did not help things by saying, you don't need to worry about that. Shay, Anthea felt completely out of control. I only meant that the female body is designed to expand given the proper hormonal response. Shay's clinical detachment was completely undermined by her wide grin. Adrian tried and failed to look concerned. All I'm saying is that something expansive for practice would be helpful. Anthea gave him a glare that ought to have set his Art Garfunkel hair on fire. Harold had more success at assuming an air of innocence. I was just worried for your sake. Adrian made a point of examining Shay's hands. If you've done any that's it, I'm out of here. Anthea gestured at Shay to let her out of the booth. I am not talking to this adolescent about my sex life. Move. After a few minutes, Shay came to find her in the restroom. I'm sorry, honey. The quick kiss made Anthea feel a little better. I'm nervous about it for your sake. I thought if we just got past the inevitable giggles, we'd be better off. Well, I suppose. I'm just not in the mood to laugh about it right now. Well, the boys have gone home, Shay added sympathetically. It's just as well you missed Adrian's discussion of which male porn star to tape to your back.